So there's a good chance this is the most meaningful and important video that I've put on my YouTube channel so far. And this is one of the most precious topics in the world to me. And I don't know who needs to hear this. I hope lots of people, maybe not lots of people need to hear it, but I hope lots of people do hear this because it's something that's totally changed my life as a father. So first thing I want to say is that I think in order to be a good spouse, you have to be a healthy person, because being a good spouse requires a lot of character and unselfishness. And I think that in order to be a good parent, you first have to be a good spouse. Marriage does not fix your life, and kids do not fix your marriage. And anyone who knew me in junior high, high school, early years like that, never would have guessed that I would have liked and enjoyed fatherhood to the extent that I have. I wasn't interested in kids. I wasn't, good with kids. But when I became a father at 25, my entire life changed totally for the better. And I've become a much better person because of my kids. And I would rather do almost anything with my kids than do something alone. And so there's sort of two verses from the Bible that have had a really big impact on me as it relates to parenting. And whether you're interested in the Bible or not, I would just encourage you to consider the wisdom in these phrases, regardless of who said them. The first is, plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed. And that's a truth that you can find outside of religion. The second is, it says, teach us, O Lord, to count our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. Now, leave the teach us, O Lord, out if you're not interested in that, but just consider the truth of counting your days and how it relates to wisdom. And an easy example would be the way you're going to spend the next 6 weeks versus the way you'd spend them if you just got a terminal cancer diagnosis this morning. You would live a more wise, less foolish life if you were really counting your days. And that's kind of what that hat I used to have is all about, less than 2/3. Anyway, so here's how it relates to parenting. As a father, there is a phrase, there's a comment that I hear more than anything else, like by a factor of 20 from everybody. They say, enjoy the time flies, enjoy them while you have them because it goes by quicker than you think. Every old person I ever talk to tells me about how fast the time goes. And it's very easy as a younger person to sort of get sick and tired of the old cliche things that everyone's telling you. But it's also important to stop for a moment and say, why is it that every older person is telling me the same thing? When they only have a sentence or two to waste on me as they pass by in the grocery store, why is it that they say this? And there's a reason for it. And it's because the time flies by. And I began to look at my life as a father in terms of like a percentage, sort of considering that at 18, they're an adult and they can go their own separate ways and never speak to me again. And so when my children turned 9, I considered that the halfway point, and I kind of mentally keep track of the percentages to just keep me focused and to count my days with my children. Okay, so probably the most precious and valuable advice I've ever received as a father came from a man named Thomas Bitzenberger in Germany. He was probably 25 years older than me. So when he gave me this advice, he was in his mid-50s and his children were grown and gone. He was a manager at Volkswagen, all around a good guy. He wasn't like power hungry and just wanting to be at the top, but he was a manager and put some effort into his career. And he had 2 children. And when the children were grown up and gone, he gave me this advice. And what he suggested to me is that every week I carve out 1 hour to spend with my children one-on-one. So I have 3 children, Peter, Rebecca, and Paul. And so he encouraged me to basically, on sort of Sunday morning, say, okay, Peter and Rebecca and Paul, this week I'd like to spend an hour with you, just with you. We can do whatever you want, literally whatever you want. And let's find a time and you pick the activity. And so it puts a little bit of responsibility on the child to find a time, and it puts a little bit of creativity into the child to come up with an activity. And what's absolutely amazing is that no matter how much time you spend with your children, this hour will feel totally different. So I retired from Volkswagen on May 22nd, and I spent 8 weeks in the car and in the tent hiking and camping with my family. I've now been playing stay-at-home dad along with my wife for the last 5.5, 6 weeks back here in Chattanooga. I see them every morning. I barely leave the house. We do everything together. We mountain bike, we rock climb, we hike, we swim, we do everything together. I have every single meal with them. I see them in the morning when they wake up. I put them down at night when they go to bed. Like, I spend an unbelievably large amount of time with my kids. And yet I just finished doing 1 hour times that's what we call them, 1 hour times. I just finished doing 1 hour times with my kids tonight. My youngest son, Paul, wanted to play. We have one of those mini Super Nintendos. He wanted to play Super Nintendo. We played for an hour, video games, and we laughed and giggled when, we lost. My daughter wanted to go for a walk around the neighborhood with our new dog that we're fostering. And then she wanted to, when we got back, she wanted to lay in a hammock with me and watch YouTube videos about otters and a YouTube channel called Dude Dad, because she thinks he's funny. My oldest son, Peter, wanted to go for a bike ride. So we went for a bike ride at dusk. Then we came back. We did another bike ride, laps in the neighborhood. We did another night bike with headlamps. And then we started a Risk game on the computer. We play Risk on the computer. So we had like 20 minutes left. We played Risk on the computer. In the past, my youngest son was so excited to army crawl underneath our house in the crawl space and go to the far corner where I had once been, and he had heard me on the outside of the brick when I was putting in a water line, that he and I, in like December last year or January earlier this year, he and I got in dirty, nasty clothes and we army crawled from the entrance into our basement to the far side of the house, because the house is built on a hill, and army crawled around underneath the house. That is something you would never suggest that you do with your family or to your kids. And those memories are so unbelievably precious. And that time with your kid, it's so different. I tell my wife, like, compared to those 1 hour times that I have with them one-on-one, in contrast, I would summarize all this other time that I spend with my children as almost like managing the crowd, right? Like making sure they're being kind, making sure they're being unselfish, making sure they're getting their chores done, making sure they eat their fruits and vegetables, making sure their hands are washed. Like, you do so much managing as a parent. And you can do that lovingly, I know that, but like, you do so much management. And it's so different than just enjoying your children, or it's so different than just being with your children. And so regardless of how many kids you have, you may not have the management problem like I'm describing because we have 3, but even if you just have 1, like, there's just such a difference between like going around town and running errands and your children being with you versus saying to your child, like, I want to spend time with you. You pick out the activity. It can be anything. And giving them that freedom and that responsibility and that leadership to choose the activity. And it is just the most unbelievably special thing. I just cannot describe it to you adequately if you haven't tried it. And then, so now I want to give a couple caveats, and that is, I have not been successful in doing this every week since Thomas gave me that advice 4 or 5 years ago. As an exhausted dad who is working full time and coming home to toddlers, carving out an hour on the one hand felt like the easiest thing in the world. It was like, how can I not carve out an hour for my children each week? You know, I mean, how many hours are in a week? 24 times. It's like, how can I not find an hour? Like, that must be so easy. And yet, on the other hand, like, it can feel exhausting. The other thing is, even though my wife was a full-time mom and a homeschooling mom at the time, we decided that she needed that time too, because that time is so different than other time. And so we alternated weeks. So we would do 1 hour times one week with the mom, my wife, their mom, 1 hour times with dad. And that was a really good balance. And I would just encourage you, if what I'm saying sounds like it's too much, maybe it is for you right now. Maybe make it a New Year's resolution. Maybe make it half-hour time, or 15-minute time, or every other week, or once a month. Whatever you have to do to make it manageable for you. There's nothing magical about 1 hour, 1 week, right? But I would just so strongly encourage you, if you're a parent, find a way to carve out this regular one-on-one time where they get to choose the activity and choose the location. And you know, if it feels like it's just one more thing that you have to remember, put the responsibility on them. Put a whiteboard on the fridge and say, you know, you need to tell me what you want to do, and you need to tell me when you want to do it, and then you need to come get me on that day, depending on their age and if they can read a clock and a calendar and all that kind of stuff. But like, put the responsibility on them. This doesn't have to be one more task that you manage. And again, scale it back or up as you see fit. And one of the things I also told the kids is, we can go somewhere, but the drive is part of the 1 hour time. So like the first couple times, my kids were really excited. We drove 15 minutes down the road and we ran around the bulldozers and the piles of rocks at a construction site. And we only did it for a half hour because we had to get home, you know? So don't overextend yourself to the point that you regret it. That's one of the things my wife and I have learned. At our church, we have the responsibility of caring for 5 widows in their elderly age. And when you get trapped at an elderly person's house and you feel like you can't leave, that's awful. And what that means is next time you're unwilling to visit, or you're less likely to visit. And so we've learned we are going to bookend and put boundaries around our visits so that we don't dread them. And I would just encourage you to do the same thing with your kids. So if you are not yet a parent, I just encourage you, just hang on to this idea. And it's not my idea. I don't know if it's Thomas's idea. And I'm sure even if it is his idea, there are other people who've thought of this and experienced this. But it's not the most important thing about parenting. So when I say it's the best advice I ever got, I'm not saying it's the most important topic. There's a lot of topics that are more important than this. But we were already working on those topics. Those topics were already on our radar. But this very practical thing affected me and my children in ways that I really can't even describe. And so I just hope that this is an encouragement to someone, maybe a conviction to someone, although that's not what I'm on about. Maybe an enlightenment or a revelation to someone. And maybe this is just something you store in your memory for the day that you become a parent. Because when you are exhausted and you're changing diapers and you're fixing meals and you're vacuuming and you're tidying up, it will feel like you spend every waking moment with your child. And you are. And yet the days and the years will go by and you will feel like I didn't really even do anything with them. I just managed them. I just taught them. When was I ever just with them for the pleasure of being with them? And I'm already that old guy who tells his friends, like, don't miss it. Please don't miss it. And so that's my hope and encouragement to you all. So if you didn't like this, don't give it a thumbs down and don't go watch something else. Just chew on it a little bit more, because it's not my nugget of gold, but it's a nugget of gold. And I hope you take it to heart. All right, take care.